okay on your side. We'll start recording. So, so this is the handstand workshop. No. Lower back pain, sciatic pain, stuff like that, very common. It's actually the #1 reason that people miss work. God, I've been doing this workshop for over 20 years now, and it's changed. The difference now is that it's shortened to 2 hours, which we did during the pandemic because I had to do it online. And but literally we could do this. I could do a whole weekend retreat on low back pain. So we're going to do a lot of hands-on stuff. That's what I've changed a lot of it. There's different pieces to what we're going to do. I'm going to do some education so that you can get a visualization of what's happening in your body, because that's part of the healing, is noticing what's happening in your body, and to teach you how to do things correctly as opposed to just doing something mindlessly. And that's really the key to yoga, is doing the practice in a mindful way that suits your own body. So we're going to do that. There's going to be some education, and then there's going to be a lot of direct work. Okay. So you'll notice that a lot of this is a yoga studio. A lot of this is yoga, but we'll do it in a therapeutic way. Okay. And I'll show you how we do it therapeutically. And all of, like all yoga poses, they're all just tools, right? They create a challenge in our body, and they give us the chance to look at our alignment, choose the amount of effort that we have in the poses. And when you do all of that correctly, it creates healing. Okay. It's almost like anything in life. If you have a problem with something and you keep the right alignment, you put the right amount of effort into it, everything tends to get better. Okay. If you do things out of alignment or you use the wrong amount of effort, things usually don't go so great. You mind, see that orange cord behind you? Do you mind plugging that in? People at home can see better if you do it. There we go. Now I'm not a ghost anymore. Okay. So let's start by doing something. So everybody should have a chair, or, if you're at home, sofa, ottoman, something like that. Something that's, gives you a bit of height, maybe 2 feet. Jen, can you come here? Well, I'll demonstrate. Jen said she would demo for me today. So what we're going to do is take your chair, and you can always put a blanket on it just for padding. It's not required. And what I want you to do is to lie on the floor and put your lower legs up here. Okay. And what you want to do is scoot as close to the chair. Try and get your thighs about 90 degrees. So almost perpendicular to the floor. Okay. So you get in this position. Okay. Just remember, get your pelvis close to the chair. And again, you want to get your thighs kind of close to 90 degrees. And then what I would have you do is lift up your head and shoulders and kind of lengthen your low back on the ground, and then lower back down. Okay. So you're making your spine long on the ground. Okay. Come on in. Okay. Grab, put your mat wherever you need to, and grab 2 blankets, 2 blocks, and a strap and a chair, and set up just like this. Okay. So this is our first pose. Okay. And this is relaxing your low back. Okay. When we have low back pain, one of the first things that happens is that the muscles in the lower part of the back start to spasm. Okay. And, the reason that, we have pain in the first place can be a number of reasons. Number one, I'll talk about this in a little bit, is an imbalance. Another one can be discs that are out of place, which is also, the result of an imbalance. Okay. But what happens is that we have to stay upright. When we're vertical, the bones of our spine stack on top of each other. And if they're no longer in balance, or if the foundation, the pelvis or the legs, aren't in balance, then we have to recruit muscles to keep everything in place. Okay? And then what happens is that the muscles want to protect us and they get into the spasming. Okay? And what happens is that compresses the low back even more because the muscles are just contracting and holding those bones together. And then the sensations that you feel don't feel good. We refer to that as pain, okay? Because we're now pinching the nerves that run through the lower back. So we're doing several things here in this pose. Number one is your lower back is supported, okay? This gives your lower back, it gives all of those muscles a chance to release, okay? So, as I talk, just let your body relax and just kind of feel the support that your low back has. And that little maneuver that we did to elongate your lower back on the ground, notice that increases the surface area of the lower part of your spine on the ground, so it gets more support. Okay, now there is an arch in your lower back that usually comes up, but in this position here, it doesn't have to arch as much. So it gives you a chance to release. And that little elongation that we did as well creates space between the bones in your lower back. So if you've got pinching nerves along there, it gives those a chance to release. Okay. It also very mildly stretches all of the connective tissue and muscles in the lower back. And that's why we stay for several minutes, so that we kind of get a reset. Okay. The other beautiful thing about this posture is that you'll notice that your hips and your shoulders, and hopefully your knees and your ankles are in the correct alignment here, at least your hips and shoulders. The floor prevents the shoulders or the hips from coming forward or backwards along the back plane. So a lot of times the reason that we have lower back issues is maybe because a shoulder or a hip is out of alignment. So these are kind of like the training wheels to relax in a place that gets the hips and shoulders to stay in proper alignment. And you might feel in your body, like maybe if you have one shoulder that normally comes more forward or one hip that comes forward, you might notice that after a couple of minutes, it starts to settle into the floor more. And sometimes you can feel that, like the body will kind of like be pulling it up away from gravity. But the more you relax, the more it's just going to drop down into the floor. Now let's add some breathing into this, okay? So what you're going to do is draw your breath in. And as you draw your breath in, try and get the breath to fill into your lower back. Like you're just expanding the breath of your lower back towards the floor. And then as you exhale, imagine that you're kind of blowing the exhalation out through a straw. So you kind of purse your lips and kind of, blow the exhalation out. And you might feel a little bit of your abdomen kind of, hollowing in as you blow through your lips on the exhalation. And that inhalation, when it's filling in your low back, it's only the breath that's expanding. You're not tilting your pelvis one way or another. It's just feeling the breath expand in this new place. Okay, and this just isn't to, get you to breathe in a new way. Your breath is actually part of your support. Your abdominal cavity supports you when you're upright. Okay, and typically when we start to create these imbalances, the breath no longer supports us. So our body is like a contained canister. We draw the breath in. It's kind of like a hydraulic lift. We put pressure into into our body, into our torso. And that air, that inhalation literally supports the spine. So I'm having you draw the breath down into the area where on the inhalation actually creates a lift to the lower back. So even though we're laying down and relaxed, visualize if all of this was happening and you were standing upright and the breath was moving in this way. If we breathe 22,000 times in a day, that'd be 22,000 repetitions in a day of the breath supporting your spine and your lower back. Now, for most of us, we don't breathe in this area. The way the places that we breathe, it's a habitual breath. The only way to create that habit is to practice. So the easiest way to practice that is through an exercise like this. And then you might practice at something similar seated, and then eventually standing, and then doing other types of, positions. Maybe in a yoga practice, moving very slowly and then kind of breathing the same way until it just starts to become more automatic. But at first, you just need to get it to become comfortable. And if your body starts to realize that this actually feels really good on your lower back, then you'll want to do it more, and then your body will start to allow you to do this more. So when you practice at home, I'm kind of cutting this short. We've been doing it for about 10 minutes or so. Do this for much longer. Okay. I'm going to add a second part to this. Okay. So this is part B. What you're going to do is keep your whole body in this position, but reach your arms up to the ceiling and interlace your fingers. Okay. Up towards the ceiling, interlace your fingers. Okay. Now, without your low back coming up off the floor, take an inhalation and reach your arms towards the floor over your head. Okay, and only go as far as, your low back doesn't come up off the floor. And then you exhale, let your arms slowly come back up towards the ceiling. Okay, and we'll do this, just do this about 15 times, just moving with your own breath. Okay. And again, only go as far as your low back not coming up off the floor. So for most people, you could get your arms to go to the floor and end up arching your low back, but you lose the pelvic stability and your body's cheating. But what we want to do is kind of keep that stabilization in the low back as we start to open the shoulders here. And one of the things that we find is that everything in the body is connected. For some people, your low back pain might be because of the shoulders being out of alignment. So we can do all kinds of things for the low back and create relief, but if the shoulders don't come back into correct alignment, then the low back pain will stay chronic. And I'll explain more of that. Okay, let's just do one more and then bring your arms back by your side. And I'm gonna move on. I'm gonna show you something that we're not gonna actually do, but you can try this on your own, because I want to get it while we're set up for this. And it's actually kind of simple. This is for the groin. So keep your legs up here for a second. Okay. And what you'll want to do is we do this progressively. So I'm going to grab your blanket over here. So I'm demonstrating with Jen here. I'm going to create a height that's higher than the floor. And I'm actually going to put a couple blocks underneath this. Okay. The reason that we're not going to do this is that I'll recommend that you do this for half hour or even an hour on each side. And that'll take our whole day, okay? So what you'll do is take your right leg on top of the blankets, on top of the setup here, and scoot over. Keep this leg up, left leg up here, but just scoot your whole body over, okay? So one leg is up, just like we had in the other one. The other leg is long, and this opens the groins, right? A lot of times people have low back pain because the pelvis is tilted one way or the other. So we come into a position like this. We relax, and you probably feel a mild pull, okay? Depending on how high the supports are. So, yeah, it's like a wishbone of the thighs, okay? So we do it on one side, we stay for at least 5 minutes, but even longer. Do the same thing on the other side. Then you come back and you lower the stack. Do it again. Till eventually your bottom leg is on the floor, top leg is up here. So, but that'll take a long time, okay? So another tool to put in your toolbox, just remember that, try it at home, okay? Okay, so let's roll to our side and let's take the props out of the way. Okay, so you can stay. Lie on your back, have your knees bent. Okay. And have your hands behind your head. Okay. So as you lie on your back, you're going to notice there's an arch in your lower back, right? So as you inhale, let the arch increase a little bit. And then as you exhale, kind of flatten it towards the floor. And then you inhale, you increase the arch in your lower back. And you exhale, and you let it lower down, okay? There's not a hardness to this, okay? This is actually a pretty simple maneuver. Notice when you increase the arch of your low back, you have to contract the muscles on the back side of your body. And then when you are flattening your low back, you have to contract the muscles on the front side. Okay? And that's all we're doing is just alternately contracting the front and the back. Okay? And then continue doing this, but let the arch come more up towards your middle spine as well. Okay, and then notice that we're actually contracting more muscles to get the arch to come more up through the spine. Okay. So a lot of times what happens as we go through life, especially for living with low back pain, we end up with muscles that contract all the time. Maybe not 100% contraction, but you might end up with muscles that contract 50% of the time. I mean, 50% of the way, but all the time. And you don't really notice after a while it starts to feel normal that you're walking around with contracted muscles in certain places. Okay? That's called sensory motor amnesia. Okay? You'll see that sometimes like someone might be tilted to the side and you say, stand up straight. And they say, I am standing up straight because their body feels like they're straight, but they're really crooked because they're used to it. Okay? Okay. So let the arch get really big, let it come all the way up your spine and then flatten it all out. Okay. So we're contracting alternate sides more and more. And now we're going to get our whole body involved in this. Okay. So the next time that you flatten your spine on the exhalation, Also, lift up your head and squeeze your elbows in front of your face. And then on the inhalation, arch your low back, arch your spine, bring your head back and press your elbows back into the floor. Okay. And then exhale, flatten your back, head and shoulders come up, squeeze your elbows in front of your face. And then as you inhale, arch your spine, head and elbows press back into the floor. And then continue with this. And notice that you are actually contracting the front plane and the back plane, and they're alternating. And what this is a principle called reciprocal inhibition. What this does is when you have muscles that have sensory motor amnesia because they don't know how to relax, well, reciprocal inhibition causes relaxation. When one side contracts, the opposite side has to relax. That's what the principle does. When one side contracts, the nervous system makes the other side relax. So if you have muscles on the back plane of your body that are constantly contracted, when the opposite side contracts, you are getting it to relax. We're starting to get rid of the sensory motor amnesia. So we start to get rid of these places where we're contracting all the time, which leads to low back pain. Okay. Let's do one more of these. Okay. Now just straighten your legs on the ground, bring your arms by your side, and let everything drop for a moment, and just tune in and notice if anything has changed since when we first started. Okay. So all of these things that we do, again, they're all tools. Some things will work great. Some things might not work for you. Okay. But really tune in and notice what works for you so that you can build your own toolkit of things that will give you relief. And also those things that give you relief are also the things that give you the long-term cure. Okay. So let's try this. Bend your knees. Okay. Now spread your feet wide, maybe about as wide as your mat or even wider. Okay. Now what you're going to do is let your knees drop to the left. Your right hip will pop up. Just let it pop up. Okay. And as your knees drop over to the side, imagine someone's pulling your thighs out of your pelvis. Okay. And you want to do this in a way that it feels like it's traction in your low back, that it feels really good in your low back. Okay. Notice it doesn't have to be a hard pull. And really tune into the sensation of the low back feeling really good. That's the correct amount of effort. Okay. You might also feel a little hollowing below your navel, about 2 inches below your navel. Okay. See if you can kind of feel that. It kind of creates a vacuum as the thighs release. There's a little vacuum that happens 2 inches below the navel. You don't know what I'm talking about, you will in a little bit. Okay. Let's bring your knees back up to center and then drop them over to the right. We'll do the same thing. Okay. So elongate the thighs away from your pelvis like someone's pulling them. And if you have someone at home that you trust, you might actually tell them to pull your thighs. That actually feels really good too. Okay, but let this feel really good in the lower back. And some of you with SI issues, one side might feel better than the other. Okay. If that is the case, do the side that feels like it's healing you longer. Okay. So just in the workshop today, we're, doing things actually kind of quickly. We practice these on your own. You would actually do them more often and longer. Okay, so let's bring your knees back up and let's come up to being seated. Okay. So you're getting an idea of the way that this works. It's, what we're going to do is we're going to use a lot of yoga postures, which, are therapeutic. I've been teaching yoga therapeutics for a long time. There was actually this time, like 10 years ago, I was in a car wreck and I had to go see a physical therapist. And every time the physical therapist said, do this, I was like, well, I already do that. It's called this. And I would show them my version of it. Every single thing was like that. And, my lawyer sent me to go see a physical therapist for all the things, because apparently that's valid. But it started to get me thinking like, wow, I should go to physical therapy school and then get a license to be a physical therapist. And I could use all my yoga therapeutics and, because it's all the same thing. But then I found out that physical therapy school really has a lot of barriers to entry and it takes a long time. And, you have to like spend 6 months being an apprentice, an unpaid apprentice. It's just like, oh, I work for a living. So I didn't do that. But a lot of the things, and I'll show you some things, they just mirror exactly what they do in physical therapy. The difference is that these techniques from the yoga perspective have been through thousands of years of yogis practicing and noticing what happens to their body. And the physical therapy comes from modern scientific studying of anatomy and so forth. And wow, they all come together to do the exact same thing, at the end. The one key difference that I find with physical therapists, say, they'll hand you a sheet of exercises and they'll say, do these exercises. And it's a really a reductionist type of thing where they try and say like, oh, you need to strengthen this muscle or strengthen, this muscle and your pain will go away. In yoga therapy techniques is everything works together. Everything's a system. Okay. Like I said, your shoulder can be out of balance, which causes low back pain. And I'll show you that, in a little bit. So we work on the whole system. And the real key is, it's not to give you a bunch of things and say, try them. The key is how you do them. Okay. Because if you do something mindlessly, you might get it right and it might work for you. But if you do it mindfully, think of this, like if I'm trying to hammer a nail, the hammer is my tool. And if I really study and aim the nail, to hit the hammer on the nail, it's going to go in. But if I just mindlessly hit around, eventually I might hit it, but I might smash my hand up in the process or damage the wood that I'm in there. It's the same thing. Okay. So we want to be very mindful of what we're doing. So what does that mean? Okay. And the key here is really our relationship with pain. Okay. Because as we do these things, there's going to be a sensation in the body. Okay. So sometimes something is painful versus something that's uncomfortable. Okay. So a really good example I like to use is, the old joke where the guy goes to the doctor, he goes, doctor, it hurts when I go like this. And the doctor goes, don't go like this. And really the key is, no, let's learn how to raise your arm in a way properly. So if they came to me, I'd say, try rotating your arm inward and raising it up, and maybe it might start to get the joint to work. And then we find the pathway to make it work and they retrain their body to do it. Then all of a sudden it no longer hurts to do that. And it's the same thing with back pain. So we're going to use these tools. So a lot of them have a challenge. And what you want to do is tune into your body, and where the lower back pain is, if it feels like it's worse, either you're not doing it correctly, okay, or it's not for you, okay? And if you're doing it and it's painful, then it's only going to make it worse, okay? I've got this great story from someone who's close to me that's been practicing yoga for 20 some years. And you can stay, Jen. Okay. And they said, I got low back pain. I've been practicing yoga for 20 some years. And why do I have low back pain? And I said, okay, well, here, do this. Set up like this and fold forward like this. And I said, do you feel any low back pain? And she goes, no. I was like, you don't feel any strain at all? And she goes, well, I feel a little bit, but it's not so bad. And I said, oh, so you do feel a little bit of strain? She's like, yeah, but it's not so bad. And I said, how many years have you been doing this? Little things over a long period of time have a great effect. Okay. So as you do these things, even notice for yourself if it's creating a little bit of strain, you want to correct that, okay? So it either means going less or changing your alignment, okay? But if you can't do it without the strain, the best, I mean, the worst thing you could do is don't do it. I mean, that's not the worst thing. I mean, the worst thing you could do is to do it incorrectly, okay? But the lowest thing that you want to do is just don't do it if you can't do it without pain, okay? Because you make the problem worse. You're reinforcing the improper alignment or the wrong amount of effort or so forth, okay? Now, the other part I talked about this was discomfort, okay? Discomfort is that sensation you have when something is new, okay? So for example, if I was stretching this way, the back of my leg might feel uncomfortable. There's a sensation of stretching, which doesn't always feel good, okay? And so you've got to be able to discern between something like this being uncomfortable but feeling good. And again, with anything in life, like if you have a new skill at work, that discomfort's good because you're learning something, but if, your office is on fire and you're burning, that's painful and it's not good for you. So I've got to discern between the discomfort in the back of my leg versus pain in my lower back, okay? I know where the challenge is supposed to be. It's not supposed to be back here, okay? So let's keep that in mind as we move forward. So what I want to do is let's do a setup here. You're going to take 2 blocks and set up your 2 blocks on their face, going down your mat. And then you're going to fold 2 blankets and put them on top. Okay, so we have a little bit of height here. So this is another one this is really passive to release the low back pain. And so the method that we want to do first is, with all of this, is that we release. Everything we've done so far has pretty much been releasing the low back. And then we align, and then at the end we strengthen, okay? So what I want you to do, I want you to lie down here, and I want you to put this edge of the blanket 2 inches below your navel, okay? No, face down. Face down, okay? 2 inches below your navel, okay? Let your legs release, okay? And then what you're gonna do is lift your torso up and lengthen your spine forward so you're caught in a really long position, okay? And then you relax, okay? So everyone get into this position here, okay? The edge of the blankets come 2 inches below your navel. And then lift your spine and lengthen it down the blanket. So as you lie down, scoot back about 2 feet that way. The end of the blanket comes below your navel. Above the pubic bone, below the navel. Yeah, right there. Now you got it. Yeah. And then you relax, okay? Now what we're doing here is we're tractioning the low back. Okay. We've got the edge of the blanket in a spot that's right on the opposite of the sacrum. And the weight of your legs drops down towards the floor. Okay. And similar to what we were doing before is, we're releasing and relaxing the lower back. Okay. This is another one you can stay in for a long time, and we're actually not going to stay for a very long time. But just for these next couple of minutes, kind of like notice, how does this feel in your lower back? And especially if your low back doesn't feel well, you can always do a setup like this. Remember, it's the relaxation that does the key. When there's some type of stress in your body, your nervous system will send the signals to your fascia to contract and hold. It's a protection mechanism. But when you're in the parasympathetic nervous system, when your body is relaxed, the connective tissue will start to release. And then the big thing you want to notice is, well, how does this feel in your lower back? If it feels really good, add it to your toolkit. Okay. So I'm going to show you another way to do this with other props. You can stay here if you're comfortable, if you can turn towards the door. And I'm just going to turn the camera towards the door if you're at home and you're in a relaxed space and you can just watch me. Okay. So this is a way to get traction with downward facing dog pose in the door. Okay. So what you need is a strong door, a wood door, not a cheap, contractor's door, with a good handle on it. And you take a loop with a strap. Okay. You take the strap around your body and then you loop it around both sides of the door handle. Right? And then you have it around your pelvis. Okay, right at the fold of your pelvis. And then what you're going to do is you come into downward facing dog pose. Okay. And you can really lengthen your arms. You can bend one knee at a time and stretch out through the opposite arm. Okay. It's easier if you use a mat underneath you because I'm sliding. But it's very similar. We're just elongating the spine in traction. Okay. So that's just another tricky way to use props to traction your spine. Okay. Any questions so far? Okay. Well, let's move on because we got a whole lot more to do. Let's do some learning here. Okay. Hope everyone at home can see this. I'll show this on the skeleton. What I did was I drew a body up here. Okay. What's important to notice is that there's 8 load-bearing joints in our body. Okay. Our ankles, our knees, our hips, and our shoulders. Okay. So what does that mean? If you think about, if you're building a building, when you probably have seen contractors, they use those plumb lines. They'll drop a string with a weight at the end of it. And that tells you what's plumb with gravity. Well, our body is like that, okay? We want to have a plumb line between our hips, our knees, and our ankles. So they don't build buildings like at an angle like this. They have to be in relationship to Earth. They have to have a good foundation. Our bodies are the same way. Our bodies react to physics the same way a building does, okay? So like a really good example, like someone that might have knock knees, you might have seen people that are, I'm exaggerating this, people like this will eventually get knee issues or hip issues, or it even causes the shoulders to come forward, okay? Same thing with bow legs, the other way. And then from the side, I have a side view here. The proper alignment is these load-bearing joints are lined up on top of each other, and the good marker is the middle of the ear should be over the middle of the shoulder, over the center of the hip, over the knee and the ankle, right? So let's try this. Everyone stand up and grab a strap. You can use this one, yeah. Okay. Let me demonstrate this and I'll give it to you. So this is what we're going to do. Go to your hip. There's this bone that sticks out on the side on the skeleton. If you want to see it, it's this bone at the top of your thigh, okay, which is actually a marker for the actual center of the joint. What you're going to do is find that bone and take your strap and create a plumb line down your leg, okay? And I want you just to stand like you normally stand, okay? And notice where that buckle ends up, okay? Now, theoretically, it should end up right at your ankle bone. Here, you can do this. What I find for most people is that it comes forward to the ankle bone, okay? With people that have hyperextended knees, I usually see it come back behind it, okay? Now, yeah, okay. So imagine what's happening here if, you can take it down, you don't have to hold it there anymore. If your pelvis starts to come forward of the ankle bone, actually everyone do that. Actually just let your pelvis kind of guide forward and notice how it feels in your low back. Doesn't feel good, right? Okay. So especially like if it doesn't feel good, let's try and change that, okay? So let's do this. In yoga, here, okay, mountain pose Tadasana teaches us all about how to stand properly, right? So let's take a block and we're going to take it way up high between our thigh bones, way up high, and then bring your legs together, okay? So your legs kind of naturally squeeze the block. So don't squeeze it intentionally, but just your legs naturally squeeze it. Now look down at your feet, okay? You want your feet to be parallel, okay? Because that's your foundation. A lot of times people will have their feet turned out. They might lose their arch. Actually, let's do this. Everyone take the block out for a second, okay? And just kind of like wiggle your legs out. And then just kind of stand like you're talking to a friend. Not how I want you to stand, but just talking to a friend. Now, I notice that if I don't pay attention, you'll notice how I stand. My right foot turns out and my left foot goes forward, okay? And all of the weight is pretty much going down my left leg, and my right leg is kind of not doing anything. So, you know, if I weigh 200 pounds, I've got 200 pounds of pressure going down these load-bearing joints and not much going through this one at all. And I actually can feel pain in my left side of my sacrum, right? So this is, you know, one of the things I discovered is the pain starting from my feet, the foundation, it just comes right up here. So when you stand, you want your feet parallel, okay? And so exactly what I mean by parallel is that the second toes are parallel to each other, okay? Because that's where the weight is driven. Now, I find that more people stand with their feet turned out than turned inwards. And for those people, what I do is I actually get them to be slightly more pigeon-toed, so maybe the outside of their feet are parallel, okay? You can decide for yourself which of those measures you want to use based on how much your feet turn out, okay? But those are kind of the guidelines. You know, I very rarely see people pigeon-toed, but I would tell them to turn their feet outward. So have your feet parallel, lift your toes, spread them wide, and notice how your low back feels just from this, okay? If your low back feels, you know, even the slightest bit better than it does normally, then that could be an indication that this might be part of the issue that contributing to this. I get some people where I do some things with the feet and all of a sudden the low back pain goes away completely. And we'll do some of that in a little bit too. So let's add the block back between our thighs. So we start with our feet parallel, so we've got a strong foundation. And notice when you have this block between your thighs, it really makes your foundation strong, okay? Can you feel your pelvis ground down to your feet, okay? And now try this. Try and push the block back to the wall behind you by rotating your thighs inward, okay? It's not, but not this kind of effort, just like this kind of effort. It's kind of a subtle moving it back. And then as it starts to go back, then pull your thighs apart. Okay, so it's a rotate in and then you kind of pull them apart. And I want you to notice if your pelvis has gone back over your ankle bone, like we've been talking about, okay? So typically when that happens is your chest compensates by coming forward. So what I want you to do is that area that's 2 inches below your navel, you lift up from there to bring your shoulders on top of your hips without your hips coming forward. Okay. And then what you can do is rotate your arms so your palms face forward, keep your shoulders open, but just let your hands relax. And then just close your eyes and feel this from the inside. Okay. So in essence, in yoga, this is mountain pose. I want you to notice how this feels in your low back. I want you to notice if you are gripping anywhere along your spine. Okay. So remember, you don't have to grip. If the bones of your spine are aligned correctly, then they will just balance on top of each other like you stacked coins up on a table on top of each other. And so part of getting rid of the pattern of gripping is to practice softening so that that habitual pattern goes away. Okay, let's open our eyes. Okay. So any questions on this one? Good, okay. What else did I want to do while we're up here? Yes. Let's try this. Take one of those folded blankets. So this is a real interesting thing that I found from one of my teachers. When we learn as yoga teachers, we're originally taught that when you stand in mountain pose, 50% of the weight goes between your heels and your toes. Then we're taught to balance that way. And then my teacher that I go to for therapeutics, he goes, no, 90% of the weight should go in your heels. Okay. And what's happening is when your pelvis starts to come forward, the weight starts to shift towards your toes, right? The heel is the hardest bone in your body. And when you look at the foot, this is where it all started to make sense to me. The foot's really in two parts. There's the heel foot, this big bulky area in the back, which is made for stability. And all of the stuff in the front is for mobility. So when you're standing, 90% of the weight should go in the heel, 10% up here. This is, it becomes a little bit of stability. When you're walking, it shifts. More of the weight goes into the mobility part. Okay. Now, what I found is that when people start putting more weight, and we just did this, where you started to lean forward, you started hurting your low back, right? So what I've started doing is having people do the opposite, actually practice putting weight into your heels, okay? At home, I actually have these slant boards. They sell them on Amazon. They're like $10. They're actually made of this, and they're slanted like this. And I'll do this every day, and it's like I can still feel the shift in my body. But we'll just simulate it here. If you take a blanket and you put the mounds of your toes on the blanket and your heels on the floor, and take that block between your thighs, and we're going to stand in mountain pose. Okay. So same thing we did before. Try and roll the block back and then spread your thighs. And then lift from 2 inches below your navel. Okay. Okay. Now I'll have you stay up here for about a minute or so. It usually takes me about a minute. I literally will start to feel my spine readjust. Okay. what's happening is that when your body gets out of balance, another part of your body has to compensate to make up for that imbalance. Okay. And then when you make that compensation, another part of your body will start to make a compensation. And so over time, to stay upright, we have all these imbalances, these compensating actions. And so what we're trying to do is undo all of that. And what's really interesting for me is, that spot that I feel change, it literally is right above my sacrum. A couple of other things that happen in this as well. We tend to get really tight in the back plane of the body and the bottom of the feet, and this starts to open that up. In kind of a somewhat passive, but this is actually active way. But you stay for several minutes for that to take effect. So we're staying in this for way less than I want to, but just take the block out and walk around and notice if it feels any different after doing that. Notice if this made a difference. And if it did make a difference for you, I highly recommend going to Amazon and getting those slanted blocks and just putting them in a place that you'll stand on them every once in a while. It's made a really big difference for me. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, that too. I mean, everyone has imbalances, but yeah. But tight calves will lead to low back pain as well. Okay. Let's do another technique here. So, everything is connected, right? So this might seem like it's a shoulder thing, but it actually, and I'll show you why this has to do with stability in your low back. So what I want you to do is stand in mountain pose and bring your hands into a karate chop position. So fingers extended and the thumb out like this. And you bring your arms out by the side with your palms facing down. And then you make small circles, maybe 6 inches going around. Now, the idea here is don't let your body move, okay? And you're gonna notice, some people, if you're shaking or, something like this, that's instability, okay? Okay, now bring your arms down, okay? I wanna do something a little bit different with this so that you can really kind of feel how this is supposed to work. Because if I just told you to do that, that's not really the whole story. Okay. What we want to do is create stability in our body and get rid of the compensations. So what I'll have you do is maybe come to the wall so that you can bring one arm kind of pressing into the wall. Like put your elbow against the wall and your forearm against the wall. And just kind of press into it. Have your feet parallel. You're in mountain pose. And bring your other arm out with your hand in karate chop position. Okay. Now, with your hand pressing into the wall, you might start to feel the sides of your belly kind of contract and stabilize, right? And then start to make the circles with your other arm, okay? So notice how you're using your arm to stabilize your body, okay? Now, try and keep that and then do the same thing. Just come away from the wall. And make your circles with that stability okay. Okay, so the body's not bound, the body is solid and the arms are moving around. Okay. So we do 30 of these, okay, and then turn your palms up and make them go backwards. Okay. And again, you just want to feel rooted from here right down through your legs. If you find your hips moving, knees moving, any compensation, slow it down and make the work happen without any compensation. Okay, and then let's come down. So any questions about that? So the thing I added to the wall was to kind of get you to feel the grounding while you do the work. Oh, no, I'm gonna skip that one. Okay, let's do this. Let's come onto our hands and knees in table pose. You can put a blanket underneath your knees. Okay. So in yoga, we do cat-cow pose to get the spine to move. And we're going to do it a little bit different. We're going to do it therapeutically so that we can get the pelvis to move here. So what I'll have you do is walk your hands about 6 inches in front of your shoulders. Okay. Keep your pelvis on top of your knees. Okay. So you're working forward. And if this hurts anyone's wrist, you can always come onto your elbows as well. So this isn't about the arms. Okay. We're working on the pelvis and the spine. So what I'll have you do is take a breath in, and as you exhale, first turn your pelvis up towards the ceiling, okay? And then spread your shoulder blades wide, and then let your head drop down, okay? Now, to go the other way, first turn your pelvis down only, okay? And then squeeze your shoulder blades, and then let your head look forward. Okay, so we're doing this in 3 different steps. Turn your pelvis up, spread your shoulder blades, and let your head drop. And then continue doing this. Okay, one of the things that happens sometimes when people get low back pain is that the pelvis stops moving in relationship to the femur. And then the low back starts to do the work that the pelvis is supposed to do. And so by working in this way, we're actually moving the pelvis on a stabilized femur. And we're actually making this movement more functional again. So if you've lost any of this, so remember, just do each step in order. Don't be in a hurry, just kind of feel, each part move. And just notice how this feels in your body doing this, especially if your pelvis needs to learn how to move forward and back again. And then next, we're going to take this into the static version of this pose. So the next time you roll your pelvis down, roll your pelvis towards the floor. Okay, squeeze your shoulder blades together. Okay, and this time, instead of your head coming up, just let your head dangle. And we're going to stay here. Okay, so the pelvis is rolled forward. It's like a cow pose, but with your head dropped. Okay, keep squeezing the shoulder blades on your back. Let the neck lengthen. Okay, you might even feel a little bit of tone in your belly. Not a lot, but a little bit of tone. I'm going to stay here for about a minute. And just notice how this feels. Okay, we'll take 3 more breaths here. Okay, so let's sit on back. Okay, so any questions so far? Okay, again, if that's something that felt really good for you, that's your body telling you that's something that you should practice more often. Okay, I can't tell you that it's something that you need, but your body will tell you. So all of these are like that. And typically, in these workshops, I used to have people bring cameras and take photos, but realize you've got the video. If you're here live, you can go and look at the video again to do something, and you can even take screenshots of the video if you need that. Yes. Yes, that's what you want to feel. And that's the actual key, is do it in a way that you feel that. Okay. Doing it mindlessly doesn't get you that, but doing it the way that you just described it, perfect. Okay.
How does that relate to the tone in the lower belly?
So,
Counteracts the suspension.
yeah, well, so what happens is a lot of times when people do this mindlessly, what they do is they just let the belly flop down. And what does that do? Well, it compresses the low back, right? So the bones, when they just drop, it's like, think of like if you got a aluminum can and you just bend it, okay? So when you create, so it compresses like this when you let everything drop. But when you tone the belly, the bones come across like this. It creates space, which is why it feels good. Now, when I say a little bit of tone in the belly, notice that little bit that I put in there, because when you have a lot of tone, it's going to pull the bones back into each other, right? So gravity pulls them together. You want a little bit of tone to pull them apart, but if you use a lot of tone, it's going to pull them back in. Okay, with a lot of yoga, and especially with the stuff we're doing, I always talk about the amount of effort. And a lot of times when we learn something new, we put this much effort into it. Okay, and if you did this with your hands, you realize your hands would get tired pretty quick. But if I said do this, you could do this for a couple of hours without even thinking about it, right? So we're going for this amount of effort, okay, this amount of tone in the belly, that it feels really good. Okay. Okay. We're going to do something now that is more by feel, because it's really hard to get the right words for everybody to agree what this is. I want you to become familiar with this part of your body that it's really key to fundamentally opening this. And I'll tell you some stories about this too. So I call this the belly bolster. So what you want to do is you want to open up a blanket and then fold it on the long side a few times, so that, maybe it's the width of your hand. You want it small enough that it fits between your hip points on your pelvis. Okay, we're going to put this bolster right here. So what we're going to do is we're going to roll this up like this, okay, in a little ball. Okay, you want to do this with the folded edge of your blanket, not the frayed edge. You want to do this with the folded edge, and you roll this up, and then I want you to lie down on top of this 2 inches below your navel and above your pubic bone. Okay. And you relax into this and you let it sink in. Okay. And for some people, it's going to feel really miserable at first. Okay. But let it soften. There's a lot of, the vagus nerve connects through here, and no, just the end of the blanket. Just the end. One little small curl. That's even too much. Yeah, like that. Yeah. Okay. So when you come onto it, let your belly accept it, okay? And even rock from side to side, okay? So that roll should be above your pubic bone and below your navel. You've got it in the right spot, it looks like, okay? And if it feels like it's on your bladder, then you've got it in the right spot. Okay, that's the unfortunate part about this, but you'll know that you have it right when it's right in your, feels like it's pressing on your bladder. Okay. Now let this sink in, okay? Rock a little bit from side to side, just let gravity sink it in. And for some people, this might feel hard as a rock at first, because this is a place where our nervous system protects us. Mammals don't like their bellies invaded. Okay. But notice as this roll goes deeper and deeper, it's starting to get into some really deep abdominal core muscles. I hate to use the word core because people don't really know what it means, and I won't use it anymore. Okay. I'm calling this the bottom of the belly. Some people call it the pit of the abdomen. Okay. But you notice that this starts to drop deeper and deeper. And I want you to notice what's on the back side of this. It's your sacrum. The very part of your spine where a lot of people have low back pain. Okay, so the sacrum where it meets, L5. And I want you to notice as this sinks in, the sides of your pelvis are dropping down towards the floor. And this is creating a lot of space back by the sacrum. So a couple of the things that we've done so far, like the time I've had you lie on your back and drop your knees and kind of pull, and I mentioned that you might feel a hollowing in this area where that roll is. Instead of creating a natural hollowing, we're actually creating a hollowing physically with the blanket roll. And so with all of the physical things that are going on in here, I want you to notice if this is giving you some relief. And start to visualize that if you were standing upright and you had an imaginary belly bolster in there, could you walk around in this way? How would you activate this in your own body? Now, if you think about what I was just saying about the amount of effort, it's not a hard effort. It's this real subtle organic effort for this to happen. Now, the first time I encountered this whole thing was back when I was experiencing low back pain. I was in a supermarket and I was pushing my grocery cart around. And I'm tall enough to the point where the handle on the grocery cart hits right below my navel, right where this is. And I realized that if I put the handle of the cart into my belly here and walked around, it felt really good. It was like the first time in several years I was able to walk without pain. Well, I started to have an imaginary grocery cart underneath me. I mean, we're not born with grocery carts when we come out of the womb, but, and so it's like this type of work here kind of gets us to be familiar with that. And part of this is like when we walk around and stand, it's like, well, if you kind of find that in your own body, that's the support that, the grocery cart support. Okay, we'll take 3 more breaths here. Okay, any questions on this before we come up? Straining? Which side is it straining? Okay, pull your left leg back more. How's that feel? Okay. Try rocking on the bolster a little bit, see if you can get it to release. Okay. The idea here is you want to be able to do this without the strain. Okay. And so you want to try different things. You can change the placement of it. You can change the size of the roll. You could even do things, for example, the next thing I would have you do is move both of your legs to the right. Does that help? Okay. Okay, so we're creating space in there. Okay. So again, try doing the things that make this, be very aware of those little pieces of strain. It's very good that you did that. And then, we'll do something here and I'll show you why that's working here. Okay, so let's roll to our side and we're going to come on up. Let's try this. Let's come up to standing. Okay. And hopefully you're still kind of feeling where that roll was, right? Okay. So part of this is one of my teachers, Kira Ryder, used to do this thing called Hallelujah and Swap Monster. And I was like, oh, that works really well for this type of stuff. So she does this pose, Hallelujah. You just bring your arms out, you open your chest, Hallelujah, right? Okay. The opposite of that is you curl your arms forward and swamp monster, right? Okay. So in swamp monster, get the bottom of the belly to kind of hollow in, right? Okay. Let's kind of go back and forth. Hallelujah. Okay. And then swamp monster, and initiate the swamp monster by that lowering of the belly, just hollowing in. And then hallelujah and swamp monster. Okay. This time when you have the swamp monster, keep the bottom of the belly hollowed in, and then everything above that come up into hallelujah, and then bring your arms down. Notice how that feels. Okay. Now we're doing this with this type of effort. Let that kind of soften. Okay. But keep it and kind of find your way back into mountain pose. Have an imaginary block between your thighs. Okay. Imagine that you've got a shopping cart right below your navel, and let's just start to walk around. Now you can put your finger there to kind of lift. And notice how that feels in your low back. Okay. Feeling less strain. So you can practice this for a while and eventually get your finger out and keep it. Okay. This is one of those things that kind of pulls us back into this alignment that I was drawing up without even thinking about it. Okay. The other secret about this is that this is where your center of gravity is in your body. For men, we tend to think of our center of gravity as being up here for some reason, but I've noticed that a lot. But you know, in sports, like in football, they always told us, you know, look at their pelvis. That's where they're going. They could be doing this stuff, but you get their pelvis. It's always where they're going to go. Fred Astaire, if you ever watch him dance, he dances from here, right? You can see it visually. That's the way we're supposed to move. Okay. Very quick thing too, when you walk from the back side of your body. Okay. Too many people have distorted their walking to where they just kind of lean forward and they get their legs to stop them from falling on their face. But instead, if you've got the hollowing here, just walk like royalty, right? The back side of your body, right? You almost like glide, right? Think of your feet being, 6 inches below the ground and your head up in the clouds. Right? And notice when you do this, how it feels pretty nice on your low back, right? Okay, let's do this. Trying to manage the time here. A lot of times people's pain comes from the sacrum being misaligned here, okay? Basically, these distortions cause the spine to move, and sometimes maybe the sacrum, the bone at the very base of the spine, might tilt left or right or forward or back or a combination of them, okay? But it wants to sit in here correctly. So I'm going to give you a way to adjust, okay? You come to a wall. You can bring your hand to the wall or a counter or a chair. And you stand in mountain pose. Now keep your knees straight. Don't bend your knees. On your left foot, you lift your toes. On your right foot, lift your right heel. Okay? Left foot, lift your toes. Right foot, lift your right heel. And then you switch. And then you switch. Okay? Keep your legs straight. Don't bend the knees. Yes, exactly. Okay? We're basically massaging this area. We're getting the sides of the pelvis to move to resettle the sacrum. Okay? Just a standing way to do this. Okay? So opposite heels and toes lift, legs are straight. You'll feel this up in the sacrum. It's a little hard to coordinate at first. Okay, and let's come on down. Anyone feel a change from that? You gotta practice it more. There's a sign that's telling you something. It's telling you something that could be, pinched nerves or muscle atrophy or something. Practice it until it starts to lift. Okay. So, a lot of the things we've been doing have been muscular. Some of the things are just really based, around the sacrum, or they can be disc problems. You can see on the skeleton here, there's an impinged, this isn't a knee workshop. There's a red disc that's bulging out here on the side. Usually when the discs bulge, they come out to the side. And when it becomes painful is when they start to push into the back, okay? Now there's several ways to test whether your pain is disc related or whether it's just muscular. One way is just walk around on your heels, bring your toes up and walk on your heels. And if you feel a really sharp pain when you do that, that's a good sign that it's a disc impingement. Okay. Or you can do it on your toes as well. Just walk on your toes. Okay. Nobody's screaming, so I'm assuming that nobody's really has a major disc thing. But let's try this, because this was kind of, I suspect that you might have a little bit of a disc thing if you were getting that impingement. So let's come onto our bellies. So lie in your belly on your mat. The way that we fix disc pain is through back bends. Okay, because what it does is it gives space on the front of the spine for the disc to move back in, and then when we start to do it, it kind of creates a vacuum for it to come in. So this is called banana cobra. Okay, so what you'll do, and for you, if your pain is on the left side, slide your pelvis over to the right about 6 inches. Okay. And, if your pain is on the left side, try shifting your pelvis over to the right. Okay. That's if you have it on one side. Otherwise, this probably isn't for you. Okay. And then the first stage is come up into Sphinx pose. So bring your elbows underneath your shoulders, your palms on the floor like a Sphinx. Okay. So this is banana Sphinx. Okay, so think about what's happening is we're creating a back bend in the spine, and we're creating space by shifting our pelvis over for the disc to move into that spot. Okay, so this is stage 1. You can stay here. The second stage is bring your hands down underneath your shoulders. Okay, and we're going to come up into cobra, and then what we're going to do is you're just going to slowly come up and down in cobra. Just kind of slowly, almost like you're creating a little bit of a pumping action. And again, you're paying attention to the sensations in your body. So especially, nobody really reported any sharp pain in here, but, notice, if this does give you relief, then it's a good tool to use. Okay, and let's do one more. And then just come down and let your forehead rest on the back of your hands. Okay. Okay, let's come up to being seated. So another thing to talk about with low back pain is the psoas muscle. And the psoas is the big muscle that connects our spine to our lower body. So it connects to the lower back onto our thigh bone, okay? And this is not a muscle that you can feel when it's tight, unlike the hamstrings. It's got a different twitch sequence. And you'll know it when you push into it laterally. You ever dig around in there, and you ever had a massage therapist do it, it'll send you through the roof, right? Yeah. And even on yourself, it kind of, but you can find it in there. It sits right in here. But you'll notice it attaches up into the spine. And when this gets tight, it's going to compress the lower back, right? Some of the things we've done will do that. I'm going to give you a few more things to do. Let me, how do I want to do this? Let's get a couple of blankets. Let's fold them up on that short. I think we're going to go this way. Okay. I'm going to demonstrate this backwards so you can see it. So you're going to lie on your side with your top leg over the support here, over the blankets. Bend your bottom leg, and you're going to grab your foot. If you can't reach your foot, take a strap around your foot, and then you're going to pull your thigh back. Okay, like pulling on a bow and arrow. You just pull it back so you feel the front of the thigh get long. You done with that? Either one. Pull the bottom leg. Pull the bottom leg back. Yeah. The top knee stays on top of the blanket. That's for comfort. So you pull the bottom leg back with the opposite arm. You can. Yeah, that's always an option. Right now, I'm focused on your thigh coming back. Okay. So focus on this happening. Yeah. Yeah. Bring your chest up on the blanket. Yeah. So you want to feel the bottom thigh keep coming back. Well, bring your pelvis on the floor. Pelvis on the floor. Pelvis on the floor. Yeah. Okay. Bring your bottom leg back behind you. Okay. No. That's okay. This is the passive knee. This leg goes on top. That goes back. Grab your foot. And then pull this back. There you go. Okay. This is actually very therapeutic for the knee when you do the other side because you're folding it correctly. Okay. So really pull it back like a bow and arrow. And you can roll the shoulder back too to get more leverage. Okay. Does it feel good? Yeah. Okay. Roll your left shoulder back and do this. There you go. Yeah, just this. There you go. Yeah. Breathe. Looks good, but notice you can also do this too and get a little bit more. Yeah. So you're just kind of using the prop to get a little bit deeper into this. Okay, so again, I'm cutting this a little bit short. You might want to do this longer at home, but let's just switch over to the other side. So same thing on the other side. Okay, and then one thing to notice when you do this, can you find the hollowing of the bottom of your belly when you do this? The psoas kind of runs through that area. At least when you pull it, it creates the vacuum that hollows that out. So notice how that's all connected. Yes. What's that? No, you're actually kind of using your hand to pull the leg back. Yeah. And yeah, no, you know what I would for knee therapy, I'd tell you to fold your leg even more. But I'm not too worried about that right now because I want you to feel the front of the thigh lengthening. Okay, so let's start to unwind from this. Okay. And then let's come up and like walk like royalty and see how it feels. Okay. So let's do another one. What I'll have you do is grab a block, and Jen, I'll demonstrate this, then you can take over. Okay. So what you want to do is come near a wall and take the block about 2 feet away from the wall and stand on it with your outer foot like you're going to be in mountain pose, and then let your left leg dangle between the block and the wall. You can take this one, Jen, so people, like they can see you there. You're fine. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So start off, you're in mountain pose, except for one foot's dangling. Okay. Which means get your pelvis to be balanced. Your shoulders are horizontal, right? Okay. But the leg near the wall dangles, and just kind of give it a little swing like a pendulum. Okay. Nothing hard. Don't contract muscles. Just kind of give it a little swing and make sure that everything is released. Let the leg drop. Just like it's like in the butcher shop, like the meat just dangles from the thing. And if you gave it a little push, it would hang. Okay. And you might notice that as it swings back and forth a little bit, you might find that your foot gets a little bit closer to the floor without the hip dropping. Okay. And when I say that, that's kind of literally. So you're not dropping the hip, the leg is actually getting longer. Okay. And the reason is that the psoas is releasing. Okay. Because we sit in chairs for a long time, our psoas is in a short position. That's the thing about our culture, is that we keep our psoas shortened for long periods of time. And then we sit up and we want it to elongate. Right now, we're using gravity to get it to elongate. So what I'll have you do now is come down and walk around and see if you can only walk around in circles. Notice if the right side feels different than the left side. Okay. For some people, it might be pretty profound. Okay. So let's even this up and do the other side. And again, if this is pretty profound for you, put this in your toolbox. And while you do this, I'll tell you the story about how first time I discovered this. Back in the day when I had low back pain, my brother and I were doing landscaping work. And we had these big railroad ties, and my back was hurting so bad. And there was a railroad tie over by the fence. And my intuition told me, like, why don't I just get up there and get my leg to hang? And I did pretty much this. And in about a minute, I heard this pop, 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 pop. And all of the joints on the lower side of my back released. It felt so good. And it was just my intuition at that time telling me, like, this is what it is. And then, you know, after studying for a number of years, I started examining this and was, oh, it's the psoas releasing. My psoas was really tight, causing me all kinds of pain. That's why you got to stand tall. So even though, you know, you're standing on it, don't let that side collapse. Actually lift out of it. Let the lower belly lift So you don't want to compress that hip. Okay, let's come down and walk around and notice if that whole ability of like walking from the bottom of the belly becomes a lot easier as you just kind of open that up. Okay. Okay, let's what do we want to do next? Let's try this. Let's everybody grab a strap and a block. Okay. So what you're going to do is come and lie on your back. Okay. You're going to make a loop around your ankles so that your ankles are about as wide as your hips. So this one's all about the foundation of our legs supporting our spine. Okay. So make a loop around your ankles so your ankles can't go wider than your hips. Then bring your feet to the floor with your knees bent. Okay. And take a block between your knees. Okay. You need to make that a little bit tighter. Hang on. Let me help you with this. So what we do is we feed it back between the two, like this. And let's get it tighter for you. Okay. So that way it stays in place. Okay. Now take the block between your knees. Let's get this a little firmer for you. Okay. So here's the plan. Okay. Let's make that a little bit tighter. Okay. So as you inhale, squeeze the block, pull your feet out into the strap, and release. Okay. And then you repeat, squeeze the block, pull your ankles out into the strap. I'm going to make this tighter. Feet a little bit closer. Okay. So just continue. Squeeze the block, pull your feet into the strap, release. Bring your feet to the floor. Knees bent. Yeah. Easier. Squeeze the block, pull the feet into the strap, release. Okay. You also can do this with your feet up on the chair like we started class today. It's an alternate way to do this. You want to do this about 30 times. What's that?
Good for horseback riding.
Oh, yeah. This is good for everybody.
Working hard, the other side's like, oh, I feel the tug because the other side's working hard.
Yeah.
Make both work.
Yeah. And notice, if you're familiar with what's happening, we're working the abductors and adductors. We're balancing them out. Okay. When they become imbalanced, then we start to create imbalances in our body. A lot of times it shows up in our low back. Okay. So I'm just saying that that's 30. So we'll come on to part 2. So what you do is take the block out between your legs. Okay. And then you're going to slide that strap up around your knees. You might have to widen it a little bit. Because your knees are thicker than your ankles. Now put the block between your ankles on the floor. Okay. So here's the technique. Squeeze the block, press your knees into the strap, release. Inhale, squeeze the block, press your knees into the strap, release. So we'll do 30 on this side. Okay, let's say that's 30. Okay, so take the strap off, you can take the block out. And let's come up and walk around. Notice if you feel more stable. Notice if that's affected your low back. Okay. So again, if your body responds to it, that's a sign it's something you should practice. Now, if it didn't do too much, don't worry about it. You're using your body as the test bed. Okay. Let's do this. Come down to being seated, and actually here, sit on a folded blanket. Just no particular reason. Trying to describe what I'm doing here. This is a technique that it embodies a lot of different techniques like myofascial release, yoga therapeutics. And I can't tell you what to do. You have to listen to your body to tell you what to do. And it'll tell you. Essentially, if you do something and it feels really good for your low back, explore in that area. We're going to start to get rid of adhesions and habits and things that take us out of the patterns that cause low back pain. We could do 2 hours just of this. I'm just kind of giving you a taste of it. So lean over onto your left hip. So the outside of your left leg just stays on the floor, and bring your right leg back somewhere. It doesn't really matter, you know, how far back. So you're just kind of like leaning over your left leg. Okay. And notice I'm not really thinking about like alignment, like do this exactly, but get this to feel like you're really just grounded on your hip. Your leg is glued to the ground. Okay. And then what you're going to do is press your hands on the floor, lift your spine, and then maybe just kind of rock a little bit from left and right. And notice how this feels in your body. Okay. Especially in terms of low back pain, move in ways that feels like it's creating traction and lengthening your low back. So there's things like you can fold over your thigh, maybe even catch the skin of your belly on your thigh. And if you've got a belly like me, if you roll forward, it gives you leverage to create even more space in your low back. Okay. And then, you know, maybe just kind of inch by inch come over to the right a little bit more. Okay. So notice you're just creating an infinite number of variations of, this is kind of like a pigeon pose, right? We're doing this very therapeutically, and you can also kind of go over to the left, kind of rolling your head around, moving your shoulders around, dropping one shoulder and the other shoulder. You can even kind of like lift up and roll one shoulder back. There's infinite possibilities here. Well, maybe finite, but notice that one little millimeter can make a huge difference in your body. But you're letting your body tell you where you want to go. So this is where, as a teacher, I can't crawl into your body and tell you the exact place that's right for you, but your body can tell you. And when you listen to it, it's going to start to move you into places that are healing. You can start decompressing the areas that have become habitually compressed because of the way that you've compensated for imbalances in your body. And you're customizing all of the movements just for what your body needs. Okay. So notice, the fixed point in this pose here is your left leg, and the challenge really starts from your hip, which is right next to your low back, which a lot of times is part of the issue. And especially practice, pressing through your hands to lift your spine away from your pelvis. You might start to notice a lot of neat little things in there. Yeah. Yeah. Roll your spine forward and back. Okay. And then eventually you'll want to even this out, and you'll just switch over to the other side. You'll get your right leg to be on the ground and your left leg goes back. And again, the right side might feel very different than the left side, but the plan is the same. Create a dance and just explore around. There's lefts and rights, there's ups and downs, there's twists and turns, there's moving to the left, moving to the right. And when you take your time and you move deliberately and slowly, you might actually find yourself in configurations that you never would have imagined that you could even do. And a lot of times when we have low back pain, there's fear attached to that, where we don't feel like we should move, okay? And that's valid, but notice that we can move if we pay attention to what's happening. Okay, and there's a whole world out there in these movements. You might notice that, sometimes when something feels good, there might have to be some type of muscular action internally to stabilize something to get the other part to open. Okay. And essentially what you're discovering is that these are functional movements that your body has forgotten how to do because it hasn't had to do them, because we've changed. We've modified to use dysfunctional movements. And then let's eventually come back up to being seated. Any questions on that? Okay, I want to show you, as I started doing this kind of stuff, the one that really, really made me learn about opening around my sacrum. And you know, it's known as fire logs pose. It looks like this. Okay. Now, if you can't do this, what you do is you bring the top foot in front of your knee on the floor. Okay. And if you do that and it looks something like this, then you get some blocks and you put blocks in the spaces. Okay. So make that block come either, so it really supports your legs. So your legs press into it. Okay. Now, one of the things I'll have you do is have your foot at a right angle and have your toes lightly spread. Don't let your foot sickle like this. What happens is we're trying to get the hips to open. And if you let your foot sickle, the ankle is going to do the work of your hip. And it's also going to cause your knee to do the work that it's not supposed to do. So you want your foot to always be at a right angle. And when you spread your toes, it's going to protect your knee. So whatever setup you have, you know, make sure that you're into something, okay? And then we're going to do the same thing. You just kind of take your hands by your hips and maybe rock your pelvis from side to side, maybe create a little bit of a twist, maybe kind of walk over to the left and lift your spine, okay? One of the things I want you to notice, does this feel real spacious in your low back? Okay. One of the things that happens when we turn our thigh bones out like this is that it pulls the sides of the pelvis away from the sacrum. And it creates all kinds of space. So when I was healing from low back pain, you know, I hit a certain point where I hit a bit of a wall. And then it wasn't until I got past that wall because I started noticing that my sacrum would find an opening to move into. It was before the sacrum was getting kind of stuck at the top of the pelvis. Okay. And you can even do things like if you lean over to one side, you can take one hand on your thigh, one hand on the floor, and just kind of lift your spine out of your pelvis. And you might even feel the side right where the sacrum is. If you have pain on the left side, you might start to feel it release. Maybe even add a little bit twist in there. Try something similar on the other side, even though it depends on which leg is in front. Okay. Let's try it on the other side. So again, whatever position you are, if you need to fill in the spaces so that your thighs press into something, use blocks or blankets, okay, or the floor. And don't fret if your legs are up like this. If you practice this more and more, eventually they will open. You know, when I started yoga, I couldn't cross my left leg over my right. Now look where I'm at. So you can start to, you know, do your dances, do some rotating, lift your spine. You want to do the thing that I was doing, ground your left thigh and kind of lean over to the right. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So it's less of an angle.
Right.
Okay. Put your ankle over your thigh bone, all the way over. Okay. Take your hand on your thigh, way up high, and then rotate it out with your hand. How's that feel? Oh, are you feeling tear?
No, but like
Okay.
I'm guarding there.
Okay.
Yeah,
Spread your toes on this foot. That's going to help you with that. Okay. And then lift up your right side when you do that. Just no, your side body. Yeah. Yeah. So you rotate the thigh out and then even lean to the left a little bit. Okay. And of course, be aware of the labral tears, but notice that it's the rotation and the traction you want and not a pulling on the labrum. Okay, one is therapeutic, one is damaging. And that's a fine line between therapy and damaging. which is why we always pay attention to strains. Okay. If it doesn't feel good, it's probably not good. But if it feels good, it's going to be
So
good.
my body just wants to go back.
Yeah.
Rather than.
Okay. Use your intuition.
Yeah.
Just learn from those sensations. I wanted to do something on sciatica. Left sciatic pain. Okay, good. Okay, let's try this. Let's come to the wall, lie on your back with your feet on the wall like you're in a chair that got pushed on its back. Okay, so you're about, a foot and a half away from the wall with your feet on the wall like your chair that got pushed on its back. Okay, so come away from the wall a little bit. So you're like Jen here. Your knees are bent, yeah. Okay, so here's what you can do. Cross your right ankle over your left thigh. Okay, so make sure it's the ankle over the thigh, not the foot. Okay, and now turn your right thigh out towards the wall. Okay, you can take your hand onto your right thigh. Don't be near the knee, actually come down towards your pelvis. Okay, and maybe have your elbow on the floor, your right elbow on the floor, and kind of set your forearm up in a way that it kind of just naturally hooks your knee towards the wall. Okay. Now, what we're doing here, almost always sciatic pain is a result of the piriformis muscle shortening. The piriformis muscle attaches from your tailbone to your outer thigh. You'll feel it in your buttocks, the right buttocks here. Okay. Over 99% of the cases, it's called a false sciatica, which is just nerve impingement. Okay. So this is stage one. If you actually feel like you want more of a stretch, you just scoot your pelvis closer to the wall. Okay, and you just kind of let the thigh keep rolling out. Okay. Now the third stage is keep your legs in this position, but let your legs slide over to the floor on the left. So imagine what that's like. You got to slide your left foot on the wall. Your legs come all the way to the floor. Some people have to move chairs out of the way. But your legs drop all the way to the floor. Try and get the outside of your left leg all the way on the floor and your foot pressing in the wall. And then keep turning the right thigh out. Yeah. Okay, so you can take your hand and turn the right thigh out and notice if that is creating an opening for you. Okay. Some people I work with, I do this one time. If the sciatica is on the right side, they might say, that's it, it's gone. Okay, let's untangle our legs and we'll try this on the other side. So start off from a seated position and then cross your left ankle over your right thigh. Turn your left thigh out. And again, you can use your left hand to kind of turn the thigh out if you need to. So try and do it from near the pelvis and not the knee. This isn't a knee. If you spread your toes, it's going to help your knee. Okay. Then, of course, you can always slide closer to the wall if you want a deeper opening that way. Okay, and then stage 3, let your legs drop all the way over to the right. Okay. Try and get the outside of your right leg all the way on the floor. And your foot's going to be in the wall. It's going to give you a good foundation to turn the left thigh out. Keep turning the left thigh outward. Feel the release deep in your left buttocks. Okay, and then let's untangle from here. Okay, and then roll to your side. Let's come up to being seated. Okay, so unfortunately, that's 4 o'clock. It goes by quick, okay? And unfortunately, I've got 10 hours worth more of material. So any questions on anything that we've done today? How's everyone feeling? You're good? Okay, so the plan is hopefully, you've picked up on the things, you've made notes, mental notes of like, what are the things? You can go back and look at the video again if something's not clear. Literally, I would go down and actually write some of the things down, like actually make like a menu of things that I need to practice. It might be anywhere from 3 to 5 things. Not everything that we did is going to be profound, but those things that were really profound for you, your body's telling you that's what you need to do. And so do it, the more you do it, the more often you do it, the longer you do it, the better it's going to be. Some of the ones, like the very first ones we did in class, those are ones that you hold for a long period of time. And it doesn't mean that you have to be still. Like you can like lay on the ground and watch a TV show or read a book or something, like, with one leg elevated and opening the groins. And you don't have, one of my teachers was saying like, yeah, that he does it like for an hour, but he does it twice a week, So, think about, budgeting your time like that. Some of these ones, like standing on the blocks, like I'll stand on the blocks probably every day for about a minute, but I probably should do it more because I really feel the shift when I do that. So, kind of think about that. And then of course, customize the stuff that we were doing towards the end here, this custom movement. Feel free to incorporate that into all of the things that we've done, okay? Because a little slight movement can be the trick of what your body needs, okay? So your body will tell you better than any doctor or anyone else, what's the best thing to do. You're your own doctor, okay? Okay, thank you so much for coming today. And I don't know what my next workshop is, probably neck and shoulders or knees, I don't know, something like that. Oh, I do have one coming up. I think it's hamstrings coming up in a month. So I think it's hamstrings. I think it might be hips. I don't know. I got to check the calendar. My mind doesn't think forward that quickly. Okay, everyone have a great rest of the weekend. Hope your back feels great. Great. Thanks for coming, everybody at home. Any questions for anyone at home? You all are good?
I have a question on with your legs up on the chair and then you put a bolster or something on, are you scooting over?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, you want your body to be parallel. So the first one, you're in the middle, but then you have to scoot to the side to get one leg to be down and one to be up.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
So think about that. You're keeping that same alignment between your knees, hips, and ankles.
Okay. I do have another question because my feet do tend to, go out. So I was trying to like do the pigeon toe, what you were talking about. But I also have bilateral arthritis in my hips. So that kind of caused some pain. Trying to reposition my feet. Is it going to be just a matter of time to where,
Well, let me, I could put a proposition out there that maybe what's happening in your hips was caused by the imbalance in your feet. And so then it's kind of ricocheting back, that when you make the correction that your pelvis has changed enough that now it feels uncomfortable.
Okay.
So theoretically, the pain that you're having, what's arthritis? It's deterioration of a joint, right?
Right.
So now your joint has deteriorated to fit the imbalance, right? So now when you get everything back in balance, it's going to have to go back the other way.
Okay. Okay.
The things that I will have you look for is that whole idea about pain versus discomfort, because it's possible that the pain could be something that's actually making the hip go even more into a dysfunctional place, or it could be coming back into the functional place. Okay. So you have to gauge the pain that you're feeling from that versus, the normal arthritic pain, versus something that, might be actually taking you further off. Okay. And the best advice I can give you is, to listen to the pain in your body, because your intuition will tell you when you really listen to it.
Oh, it does.
Over time, I mean, if you do it over time and it starts to feel better, you're on the right track.
Okay. Okay.
You do it if you keep your feet parallel and it starts to get worse. It could be, I would say there could be another imbalance that's actually taking it off even more, but usually everything's from the ground up, right? The feet first. So you get the feet in the right position, and eventually the knees correct, the hips correct, the shoulders correct. But you have to use your intuition with all of that. And any medical professional that would look at it, they can tell you the results of what's happening, but unless they can get inside of your body,
Yeah.
they're not going to be able to tell as well as you can.
Okay.
Some of those sensations.
Okay. So just kind of take it a little bit slower. Don't try to do so much all at once, kind of like build on it and just see how my body feels as I'm making those adjustments.
But add to that is, as you do it, become more and more mindful of what's happening in there.
Okay.
Because when you do that, when you put the feet straight and you start to feel pain, you might even notice like, oh, you know what? If I just lift the bottom of my belly just a little bit, that pain goes away.
Okay.
Or maybe it's like turning the thighs in a little bit makes it go away. Because
I got real uncoordinated there because I was trying to follow everything, as far as, bringing the, with the block, bringing the thighs in. And so, yeah, I got a little uncoordinated, and I think I just kind of really tensed up with that too. So, yeah.
keys to back pain is taking your time and becoming very aware of what every little thing does. And then you start to realize, what do you need to do for all of it? And unfortunately, I don't have a pill that I can give you that's going to make everything better.
Right.
It's like,
right.
you have to learn about your own body. And, what happened with me was that over time, I kind of learned how to move in a way that I kind of make my own chiropractic adjustments, and it's, just took a long time to do that, but you got to spend your time. And a lot of times people don't do it because, they think of pain as something to be avoided. And it's like, pain is your invitation to go in and explore, why it's causing pain and how to undo it, mentally.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
I always kind of think of that. It's like, how would you do that in normal life? For example, if you're having trouble in a relationship or with a boss, you would go and you would sit down and think why am I having trouble with my boss? What do they want? What do I want? How do I get through that, as opposed to just avoiding the person, for example.
Yeah.
So
you had mentioned hamstrings, maybe your next workshop is that pretty interconnected with the hips too? Because I know mine are very, very tight. And I thought I just had tight hips where it was the arthritis developing. So for, the last couple of years, I've been trying to just loosen up the hips. And then, when the pain felt really different, and then I, went to the doctor and they did the MRI and saw the arthritis. So I'm wondering if the hamstrings have an effect as well on that. And
So, yeah, a lot of the stuff, like the stuff that we do with like the hips and the hamstrings and all of that, will go directly into those areas. But a lot of times, like hip dysfunction and injuries are a result of just imbalance somewhere else. Like I'll work with a lot of marathon runners that have hip issues or knee issues, and I'll find that the problem is somewhere else, but that's where it shows up.
Oh.
And then a lot of times, like people will go to the doctors to like have their hips fixed, but it doesn't fix the cause of the problem. It just, they have an artificial hip put in, for example. But like if their feet are not aligned correctly, they're just, they're ruining their artificial joint now.
Yeah, and that makes sense. It makes sense if you can't get to the very root of what's causing the imbalances, it seems like nothing's going to work because you haven't got to that one particular area. So, okay. Well, thank you. This was a very, very good class. And I like a lot of the especially the laying with the feet up and like you said, just, while if you're watching something on TV, take that, because I could feel the pressure coming off right away on my low back with my feet up on the chair like that, and then doing that crunch up and then going back down to kind of strengthen or lengthen the spine. That really made a difference. So just those couple little different things that I tried today made a big difference. So I took a lot of notes.
Sometimes we forget some of the key points and then we go back and go, oh yeah.
Yeah.
So I would go and practice the things, watch the video again to make sure you get it correct, and then, create a plan for yourself.
Absolutely. Well, thank you. Thank you very much.
I'll do the same thing.
Appreciate it.
I'm coming back into the screen. Thanks so much. That was very helpful. I heard her mentioning the hamstrings, and it's funny, a couple of years ago, I was having the lower back pain and I started doing just hamstring stretches, and it made it go away for, I don't know, 3 or 4 years. I didn't have any recurrence. But then when COVID hit, I used to swim daily and I stopped swimming. And so sometime, and now I'm swimming again, but sometime during that year and a half of not swimming, the back things, and I'm sure I'm doing that. I have misalignment issues or something. So I'd be interested if, I don't know, you do private lessons also, right?
Yeah. Yeah, call the studio. I usually do them at my house now. I used to do them here, but I live in Clarendon, so I have people who just come to the house and do it in my sunroom.
Yeah, sure. That sounds cool. Great. Yeah, I think I'll start with watching the film again and trying to dissect some of the moves and trying to implement them a little bit. But at some point, when I have a moment, I will call you back and I'll contact the studio and would love to set up something private.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sounds good. Okay, guys.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Amir.